This one is a bit unfair. On one side, we have a movie that stars Humphrey Bogart, Audrey Hepburn, and William Holden. On the other side, we have a remake that Harrison Ford was meant to carry, but completely fumbled. Giants of Golden Age cinema on one side, and a giant of science fiction on the other side. These two movies share a story, but deviate greatly in spirit. One is a funny movie that's rewarding regardless of how often you rewatch it. The other has a final thought that makes you cringe. One is an uneasy romance that's carried by superb chemistry. The other is an uneasy romance that forces you to look away. I know what you're thinking. 1995 is also in the past. Not if you're a time traveler. Any year can be the present. Today, 1995 is my present. Surprisingly, the story is the same. If I hadn't watched the original first, I would have wondered why this movie from 1995 was so weird. Sometimes it felt like the remake was depending on the original for context. Often, I'd get so frustrated with the 1995 version, but then I'd remember the original existed. That made me happy, for this would be the only time I ever had to watch its facsimile. Anyway, Sabrina has been pining for David all her life. She's sent to Paris by her father, who believes it would be good for her if she's to get over David. She goes there, comes back a transformed woman, immediately gets David's attention, immediately throwing a wrench into the Larrabee family plans. Linus, the family's oldest son, famous for being cold and business first, never married even once. Yes, that Linus. Anyway, Linus sets out to deal with the situation by handling Sabrina. However, the results are suboptimal as Linus and Sabrina end up falling in love. There's definitely acting in the remake. Sometimes, it's so apparent it makes you realize you're watching a movie. In the original, you get lost in the performance so much that you envy those attending the most recent Larrabee party. Only Julia Ormond, playing Sabrina, stands out in the 1995 version. Harrison Ford is not a good romantic lead. Greg Kinnear is quite good as David Larrabee, but then you realize William Holden played the original and you start to reevaluate his performances. There are too many great actors in the 1954 version for me to pick out a standout. Think of the chef in Paris who's teaching Sabrina how to cook. Think of Mr. Fairchild, the chauffeur, and how he has so many memorable moments throughout the movie. Think of the entire Larrabee family and its colorful characters. If you watch the remake in a vacuum, it still does not hold up against other movies that came out in 1995. If you watch it knowing about the 1954 version, you immediately stop and then rewatch Hepburn and Bogart together. The remake decapitates the most important element of the original movie, the comedy. After all, this is a ridiculous story. If it's told without one or two laughs, we end up with a pure romance. And a pure romance requires expert writing, something that the remake seems to have little of. There's so much comedy in the original. I forgot that for a moment while watching the remake. I found myself wondering why I even loved the 1954 version. And then I rewatched it. Even if you don't care about how star-studded the movie is, you'll immediately fall in love with the character dynamics and how often they make you laugh. I would have forgiven the remake if they at least made it funnier. But no, they took themselves too seriously. They produced a movie whose runtime feels punishing 15 minutes in. Both these movies have two megastar male leads in Humphrey Bogart and Harrison Ford. Unfortunately, only one of them fits into the role of Linus Larrabee. If you think about it, it's not that surprising. One only has to watch Casablanca or To Have and Have Not to witness Bogart's impressive range. Ford, on the other hand, is usually in movies whose grandiose set pieces and larger-than-life stories demand competent acting, yes, but not performances at a level that would make one rival Daniel Day-Lewis. I'll speak about Bogart then. I had forgotten how funny and different his performance was in Sabrina. He had been so broody in A Lonely Place that I forgot that he had the capacity for playfulness. Sabrina made me remember that he was fun in To Have and Have Not, The Big Sleep, and even Key Largo. In Sabrina, he's perfectly matched by every other actor on screen. My favorite matchup of his, outside of Hepburn, is Walter Hamden, who plays his father, Oliver Larrabee. Every time they're on screen together, you're sure to laugh. Audrey Hepburn is magnificent in the 1954 movie. You have to remember that her first movie was Roman Holiday, which came out a year earlier. It's impressive how quickly she went from being unknown to an icon. There's poignancy and depth in her performance that's missing in the 1995 version. Julia Ormond in the remake is impressive in the Paris scenes and occasionally as post-Paris Sabrina. However, as I noted before, she's being held back by Ford. She's dynamic on screen, whereas Ford is wooden. I very much liked Julia Ormond, and I found myself wondering how she'd be next to Bogart. However, I watched Hepburn with Bogart, and I realized that there are levels to this. Hepburn is playful when she needs to be, deeply serious when it's called for, and even mischievous at times. Julia Ormond is very good dramatically, but she doesn't possess the emotional range that makes you believe that Sabrina is a living, breathing person. The Larrabee family are the main characters. They set the story forth, they control every aspect of it, and they close it out at the end. However, while the original is rich with so many family moments, the remake goes with a stereotype. Maud Larrabee in the remake is cold and unapproachable. She's controlling of her sons and never has a light moment. In the original, she plays the matriarch who is trying to get her household in order. She's not too judging of Sabrina, but is worried about her presence. Oliver Larrabee is dead in the remake. In the original, he's the most alive character. He fights with his sons, always to a great comedic outcome, and he tries to pretend he's a saint to his wife. David and Linus aren't as distant to each other as the 1995 version suggests. In the remake, Linus has to drag David to get time with Sabrina. In the 1954 version, David actually supports Linus. He wants Sabrina to have fun with Linus as he recovers from his little accident. The Larrabee family feels like a true family in the original. It loses this quality in the remake. I loved the color of the Paris scenes. I loved it so much, I wished this would be a movie inspired by Sabrina instead of a remake. Perhaps a girl in 1995 finds herself in a similar situation and goes to Paris. Perhaps if she goes there, she'll find herself. Actually, you know what? There are so many movies like this already. Anyway, go watch the original Sabrina. Or if you want to see a woman escape from America to find herself in Europe, watch Under the Tuscan Sun.